Yeah, so that's just one thing to slightly, not as even necessarily push back, but just to qualify what you just said about how if we're supposed to be in the middle of 5G frenzy, it might not be quite as frenzied as previous generations.
I take that point. My only
skeptic investment.
Where I'm sceptical is that, let's look at the UK, for example, because we know that market better than probably any other one, the two of us. You've got the 4 operators there who've all gone out and awarded contracts to whichever vendors they want to do their 5G rollout, yeah?
Or at least one phase of it.
Well, I don't know if it is one phase of it.
You don't think the 5G rollout's phased?
Look.
Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. No guest this week. We're going to have one, but hopefully we're going to get one next week. So I'll just leave it at that.
Do we know who it is?
Well, I'm not going to say in case it doesn't work again.
It's a surprise guest.
A surprise guest. There we go. What else? I thought last week's was really good fun with Neil McRae from BT.
Yeah.
We went out to the pub after and had a few. That was all groovy. And we didn't have to buy any beers this week because they brought so many last week. We're still getting through them all, including a rather large amount of what Richard Fogg described as a chewy beer. Which
cardboard juice.
Yeah, which is. I
don't think it is chewy though, really.
No, I quite like it. It's just Rich is obviously just a part-timer on this stuff, but it's this heavy gravity, which is 6.5%.
I need to try one of those.
You can't do a whole pod on these.
Is there one of those in there?
There's a couple in there. Well,
right,
I'll match you.
After I've got my
we've had these gamma rays, which are no starter beer at 5.4%.
Well, I've already had my starter beer. I'm working my way up the scale.
It'll just be like some scene out of Asterix when they break into a wine cellar by the end of it. People are just sort of swinging at each other.
That's when they write things in sort of, so they're drunk.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to sort of figure out what they're actually saying, reading the cartoons.
Those are brilliant, those things. But yeah, those drunk ones. And Obelix, his nose goes red. That's how you know he's drunk.
Yeah.
So, yes. What else? Been pretty nippy this week, isn't it?
It's pretty nippy in this room right now.
Yeah, well, we're warming up now, thanks to a bit of gamma ray. But yeah, we had our little golden sort of week or two. This is what happens in England. You have it like late April, early May. Birds start getting all optimistic.
It's freezing.
They are still optimistic though.
Cold again.
I can still hear them at 4:30 in the morning outside.
Yeah, cheaping away. It's too late now. They've already had little chicks. They've got to just get on with it, no matter how cold it is. So, yes, what have we been up to this week? The only thing that we've done together, I'm not going to talk too much about it because we're going to do a segment on it at the end, is we went and had a really nice lunch with Red Hat, arranged by my mate Amy, who does in-house PR. I've known Amy pretty much as long as I've done this job. First met her when she was agency side at Axicom. And we realised that we were both going to a download festival where we bumped into each other. So that was it. We knew we'd be mates because she likes metal. I was talking about my Fuck Corona T-shirt last week, and I've put that on this week. So there we are.
Looks good.
Don't wear that often. I definitely do think Fuck Corona because I'm trying to book us some holiday to Spain, and I still can't do it because Spain won't let you in unless you're fully vaxxed up to the max.
Yeah, meaning you have to have a booster.
Yeah. Well, you got to have some kind of vaccine that's been done within 270 days. So let's say 9 months.
Okay, so this is what I don't get, because even if you've had a booster, I mean, I had mine quite a long time ago now, my booster. So some people are going to, before long, they're going to be running out on the 270-day thing.
Yeah.
And then what do you do? Because governments are offering you an option in some countries of having a fourth.
Before Christmas.
Even if you wanted to,
right,
those are only offered to people who are in genuinely older or vulnerable groups. So
no, it's completely.
So then what do? You can't go to Spain
completely incoherent.
In September, I won't be able to.
Yeah,
because I did mine in December.
I mean,
right. So and has France got the same gig going on?
No, I think it's only Spain that does this.
Spain's being particularly dickish.
Idiots.
Yeah, that's very annoying.
Seriously.
But the other thing is, neither of my kids have been vaccinated. Now I'm not going to just inject them with fucking biological weirdness just so I can go on holiday. For God's sake. I'm sure it's all for the best and everything, but they don't need it. They probably both had it, but they just shrug it off.
Yeah.
It'd be like saying, well, they can come in, but get them to take this random pink pill because we've decided they've got to.
I thought we were done with the coronavirus talks on.
Yeah.
This is like going back in time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know.
I
Well,
feel
okay. Well, I'll leave it there.
No. It has sort of come up again a little bit recently, but
I thought
Yeah, well,
the
it's just-
cases are way down here.
they are way down, which is another reason why all of this stuff shouldn't even be discussed
I'm worried.
anymore.
Is there going to be at some point a WHO conference where they go, okay, guys, it's over?
It's over.
I
Move
think,
Are they?
to be honest,
I
the
don't think so.
WHO is just kind of carry on.
But yeah,
sort
but
of
you cannot be in a
making a fuss about
perpetual
it.
pandemic. Pandemics have to
Well,
end.
that concept is going to probably feed into some of my more tinfoil hat stuff in the first segment, because I think it's just become about power now. I think it's just become about population control. They've seen, there was a famous quote from that idiot Neil Ferguson, that epidemiologist, who went around having a bit on the side when everyone else was locked down.
That's right. He's another one of those.
Yeah, another of those. They were all at it. It's like it's almost like telling us to lock down was an
Have you seen
aphrodisiac
that
for
thing
them.
with Dominic Raab? Is it, or he's going? There definitely weren't parties that happened, but if there were parties, I'm sure all the rules were followed.
Yeah.
It's like,
Which
what
is
a
it then,
shit.
Dom?
I mean,
Do you know what I mean? And we've got all this silliness going on. Like, you know, we've had all the Partygate with Bojo. Now it turns out Starmer and Rayner were on the lash at the same time, and they're all just as bad as each other. It's appalling.
I mean, to be honest with you, everybody was. I think.
Well,
there's a small section of the population that wasn't, because they were following the rules.
Yeah.
And they were sort of waving their finger and sort of taking the moral high ground. But we were going out and having a few drinks when we weren't supposed to be, weren't we?
Yeah.
Everybody was. Come on,
I know,
who
and
wasn't?
And all these hall monitors acting like, well, then you broke the law.
I know. Well, yeah, I did. Sorry.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Just like that time I went 35 in a 30. Should have just fucking calmed down. What was all that? Yes, that's what I think. I think it's just power. Neil Ferguson is quoted as saying, "We didn't think we could get away with this stuff," and which is making us lock down, making us jump through hoops, making us wear masks, making us have injections, etc., etc., etc. I think it's just unlocked. They've thought, Jesus Christ, we can really control these fuckers.
Yeah.
And I think they're just reluctant to let go. I mean, why do you go into politics if not to accumulate power? I mean, surely it's in their DNA.
What's he doing?
He's giving me a falling asleep face.
I've got coronavirus fatigue.
I'll tell you what, we'll talk about open source software in a sec. That'll wake you up. Anyway, all right, well, I won't labour it, as I can take a fucking hint. But that's why I don't think, to answer your question, actually, Pierre, that's why I don't think it will ever end, as long as they think they can get away with it.
Oh, then we need to rename the word pandemic then. Cannot be a permanent state.
No, well, they probably will. They'll just call it a sort of heightened biological safety situation.
A high
or something
biological
like that.
safety threat level 5.
Yeah. Well,
Brought it
we'll
down to threat level 4.
have a traffic light system.
Well, it's the same
We're
with
like that.
terrorism, isn't it? We're always at
DEFCON 1.
a high risk
Yeah.
of attack. Therefore, you can't get on a plane these days without taking a bottle of water on. You're not allowed to do that anymore.
Yeah,
And
just
can't take your toiletry bag unless it's got things that
you've
are
got to take your shoes off just because one idiot gave
Yeah.
it a go about 10 years ago.
Well,
I
you
know.
made the sensible point that once somebody takes a bomb in with stuffed up his arse, we'll all be sort of subjected to body cavity searches every time we go on a plane.
That would put a dent on the airlines.
Do you know what I mean? There'd be some queues at security then, wouldn't there? Yes. People wearing onesies.
Actually, no. You know those machines? No, they already do. You know when you lift your arms and you zzz, zzz.
You can see a hand
That's-
grenade lodged in the rectum
No,
at that stage.
yeah,
see-
you
they
can
can-
with those machines.
X-ray your arse in those machines.
No.
don't you?
If there's something that's not tissue inside
Yeah.
of you, the machine picks it up.
That's why
Right.
people with metal plates for knees and
Yeah.
skull parts of their skull
Yeah,
get sort of picked up all
So
the time.
what if you've got a prosthetic arse? Then
You're in trouble.
You're not allowed on the plane.
You
I
need a
wonder what it
certificate.
is.
Plastic ass certificate.
Okay, right. So yes.
Telecom.
So we before we get onto what we're talking about, we had a very nice lunch. We went to a place called the Duck and Waffle.
Oh yeah, that's very nice.
Yeah.
Well,
They had a Starprom.
is it?
Isn't the place that have a Starprom like tank inside?
Didn't see that.
No?
It's
Was that
absolutely
It's at the
high
top
up.
of. It's at the top of. Quite
Broadgate, Liverpool
a
Street.
tall Bishopsgate. Yeah,
Bishopsgate. Sorry.
110.
You're looking down on the gherkin from
Oh,
it,
okay, so that's
basically.
another one now.
You see the top of the gherkin.
Because you would have liked that. There's a duck and waffle thing in Soho where there's a tank.
I bet there's a few
Okay.
of them, yeah.
And they're called a duck and waffle because you can, if you want,
As Scott discovered.
if you want, you can get a duck on a waffle
Yeah.
with an egg on it.
Oof.
It's the
but I-
weirdest thing I've ever seen.
But I asked
Sorry.
for the lamb, And the waitress came in and went, Scott, and she had this fucking duck on a waffle and an egg, and I was like, yeah, and she goes, here you are. And then Amy went out and had a little quiet word and went, actually, he asked for lamb, and they went, well, it's got his fucking name on it. And Amy went, look, we can sort out some lamb if you... don't worry, I'll
Terrible
give it a go. I mean, the duck was really nice. It's this comfy, sort of crispy duck. It's like the crispy aromatic duck you have in Chinese restaurants that you skin up. And that's fine. I just wouldn't necessarily put it on a waffle.
With an egg on it.
And then an egg.
It's the name of the restaurant. You have to give it a try.
I know. Well, I was joking at the time. Yeah, thank God that their signature dish wasn't, just sort of...
Snails.
Bull's arse or something. The bull's arse. That's probably the name of a pub somewhere.
Do you think the dish came before the name of the restaurant?
Oh, no.
Someone went, let's call it duck and waffle because it sounds really good. Now we need to put a duck on a waffle.
It's probably that way around, wasn't it? The duck and waffle, that sounds pretty good.
I've never seen duck done with waffle and an egg. And then you got something that looked like maple syrup to pour on it.
Yeah. Don't they put duck in like a pancake?
Weirder. What? Yeah, but that's different. That's like
the same dough.
No, it's a savoury pancake with a sort of barbecue type sauce.
A waffle's a sweet thing. They gave me a little jug of like
plum sauce,
treacle or golden syrup or something.
Hoisin or no?
Yeah, hoisin or plum sauce or whatever.
Yeah.
He's so ignorant.
No, it's ignorant to call it barbecue sauce. Come on.
Well, that's
Well, I don't know
I'm sure Chinese people
It's dark
will push
ketchup.
that. Chinese ketchup, innit?
Oh, is that how
it's Indonesian, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how he talks. Chinese ketchup.
Ketchup's Indonesian anyway, isn't it? It's an Indonesian word.
Well, there you live and learn.
I think so.
This is turning out to be a great podcast.
Yeah. It's like people going, make with the telecoms. Okay, so that was the restaurant. That's very nice. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Red Hat. That's all groovy. And part of your reward will be for us to bang on about it at the end of this segment, after which we'll have drunk some moody beers, so brace yourself. What are we going to talk about before then? We got to talk about the Twitter and the Mustang. We got to make that a main feature because this was the week where he actually had his bid for it accepted. And not only is that remarkable in and of itself, that some dude can just go, yeah, I'm buying that massive company. But the general panic attack from all corners of what I call the establishment has just been hilarious and worrying to behold.
And Tesla investors.
Tesla investors, yeah. And
he sold $4 billion worth of shares.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was before or after Tesla's share price went down about 10%. But presumably Tesla investors could anticipate a massive sell-off because he had to fucking find the cash to buy Twitter. But he just doesn't seem to play by normal rules. He tweets about stuff that you're not supposed to tweet about. I mean, he's still in trouble for tweeting about thinking about taking Tesla private a few years ago. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Musk, but that is obviously out of order. You can't be tweeting stuff that materially affects the share price.
Anybody else would be in jail. Yeah.
We should we should get onto this in a minute, though.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the thing.
So that's the first thing we're going to chat about. Then we're going to talk about its quarterly season, and we had Nokia's numbers. Andrew covered them for us, but I obviously edited it, so I've got some idea, but I'll let you do the heavy lifting on that one.
We talk a bit about Huawei as well, because they did come out with a Q1 statement.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't very in-depth.
No, it's your standard Huawei. Yeah, we flogged this much.
It's quite hard to get it out of them.
Yeah, we flogged this much, and that's all you're getting. And then we're going to finish off recapping on some conversations. So the reason we had lunch, it wasn't just to have lunch. It was like a little round table thing. There were other journalists there, and we were chatting mainly about the edge computing, that sort of thing.
The U2 guitarist.
Yeah, exactly. And how he's just basically just got one riff, and he's made that work for 20 years. And inevitably we spoke about open source because that's Red Hat's shtick. So that's what we'll do, and I will just remind you that if you're watching this on the site or on YouTube or on Facebook, you can also listen to it on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, loads of other podcasting platforms. And if you want to hear more from me, subscribe to Telecoms.com newsletter. And if you want to hear more from Ian, subscribe to one of a few light reading newsletters. Is there one that you feature particularly prominently, Ian?
I mean, they've actually got rid of a lot of the newsletters.
Oh, okay.
So the main ones are Light Reading Daily and Light Reading Weekly.
Oh, okay, well, that's
but there is
fairly
there's a
self-explanatory.
cable one and there's a 5G one.
So you're not so cable-y, really, are you?
That's mainly Jeff in the US who looks after that, and the 5G one is sort of Mike Dano who looks. But we all write about 5G, obviously. I mean, that's one of the things.
Okay,
isn't it?
we'll subscribe to the Daily.
Yeah, the Daily's the main one, really.
Or if that's too much, just a weekly. I mean, who wants Ian every day after all?
The weekly's the highlights. Sorry, Pierre.
Oh, Pierre's trying to talk.
It's the evergreen articles, really.
Okay, go on, Pierre.
Anyway, I just realised it's the last one of the month, and the city of the month is Oslo.
Ah.
So skål to our...
Oh, yeah. Skull.
Cheers.
Is that a
Norwegians.
Norway thing to say skull? I thought it was Swedish.
Cool. I think, well, it's
both.
pretty much the same.
Okay.
And Danish as well.
Is it pretty similar lingo, the three of them have got?
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, Danish and Swedish are really close.
Okay.
I think Norwegian's slightly different.
And Finnish is just the fuck out there. It's completely different, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
but the
Flemish
Swedes,
and Dutch.
everybody struggles to understand the Danes, even though they can understand the others.
Okay.
Because of the pronunciation.
Just the accent and...
Yeah, they basically just... It's like they just swallow a lot of consonants and don't pronounce it. It's like sort of a London accent or something.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
So
that we
I
were
just went through a phase of trying to learn a bit of Danish because years ago I had a Danish girlfriend and it was just like the most impossible thing to pronounce. But if you do the same in Swedish, it becomes a bit easier.
Bless you. I've been married to someone who comes from Iran for 20 years and I've never made any effort to learn any Farsi.
But the English
I'm
people are really bad
I'm on
at learning
Slovak
languages.
now, which isn't any easier.
How you doing? How's your Slovak going?
It's better than my Danish ever was, but it's still pretty useless.
But then, obviously for reasons that don't need to be detailed, we never planned to go over to Iran to see Katty's extended family, whereas you go over to Slovakia quite a lot, so I can see why you've got an extra incentive.
Yeah.
Even if it's just so you know how to order a moody Pilsner.
Exactly, which is what I do over there usually with
Pretty
my
much
Slovak.
it. It's the extent of your interaction.
I know my numbers, so I can, if there's a group of people with me, I can say 5 Pilsners.
Go on then. He's drying up.
It's Pet. What is it? Prosím si piva. Prosím si pět piva.
Cool. Sounds convincing to me.
But yeah.
Bless you.
Sounds nice and foreign. Cool. All right. So Twitter and Musk and all that sort of thing. So I particularly relish this because it's brought a more sort of Scott Pacino pet topic TM to the fore. By the way, actually, I was thinking about Pierre quite rightly taking the piss out of me last week for repeating myself over I'm quite libertarian, small state, classical liberal type of thing. The only thing I'll say why it's good practice for a journalist to consistently stress that is to telegraph and pre-announce your bias, which not enough journalists do. Too many journalists will write a biased way without just basically saying, I'm biased, so here's my biased perspective. So I think it's important to sort of own your bias. And my bias is definitely in favour of smaller states and less regulation, if at all possible. So, so there we are. So back off, Pierre. And so, so he's come out, he's gone, I reckon I can whip together 44 billion, sorry. And initially, the Twitter board just went, nah, fuck off. And they came up with this thing called a poison pill, which is some kind of way of diluting the share stock by offering it on the cheap to a bunch of people, which still seems...
I think it makes it hard for one person, so more than 15%.
Yeah, because that's what it's designed to do. But which seems very dodgy to me anyway.
Yeah.
And, and seems to be contemptuous of existing shareholders on two fronts. Firstly, this dilution in and of itself. And secondly, it's basically unilaterally deciding on their behalf to not accept an offer, which is a premium of sort of 30, 40% on what the share price was worth, perhaps even 50% going back a few months, on what it was worth quite recently. So, who are they to make that decision? Let's say I was richer than I am and I got $1 million worth of Twitter shares and Elon Musk's offering me sort of $1.5 million for them. Yeah. I'll be like, I'll take that 500k. Go party time.
I mean, I suppose the way this stuff generally works is that the management board eventually puts something before shareholders, don't they? But up to the point when they do that, they're sort of in. So you might have a situation like not this one where someone comes along and goes, right, I'm going to bid this, and they reject it because they don't think it's good enough. But that doesn't seem to be what happened this time. It just seemed to be because he made it pretty clear.
So you're saying that they're trying to stop him acquiring too much on the sly?
Well, no, I'm just saying the reasons that that a management board might fight a takeover attempt at first could be to do with the fact that they think they're undervaluing the company, and they're trying to get a better deal.
In which case they should say so, obviously.
Yeah, exactly, and you do get that happening, and then eventually when they sort of, you get other bids coming in, and eventually they'll take something to their shareholders, won't they? And they'll say, "This is what we've got. We advise shareholders to back it." And then there's a vote, isn't there? And then it sort of then they sort of decide to sell or not. But
and if they advise against it, it becomes a hostile thing, and you can do things like proxy fights and tender offers and all that sort of thing.
But this just seemed to be an outright kind of attempt to not sell it.
No.
Which did seem
not
odd.
listening.
I mean, at first when they were doing it, I was thinking, well, hang on a minute, are they looking at the fact that Twitter's share price was like 77 at one point last year, and it's now like 40 odd or whatever? But it didn't seem to be to do with that. It just seemed to be...
He definitely picked his moment. He picked a historical trough in the share price to make his bid, but that's what you do, isn't it?
Yeah, and
we don't know how long he's been thinking about this, though.
But like you say, they weren't saying this undervalues Twitter.
No.
Elon, go away and come back with something.
They're saying we don't want you in charge of it.
They just seem to be saying we don't want someone taking it over, and therefore we're going to introduce this poison pill and cap people at 15% sort of thing.
Yeah, and I suspect it wasn't just that they don't want someone taking over. I suspect if it was someone a bit more aligned with their worldview, like let's say Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or something like that.
Now maybe, I don't know, maybe there's... I don't know, behind the scenes stuff, maybe there's a feeling, and they've gone off and talked to shareholders and gone, well, if he does take it, if you stay with us, we can make it into a really successful business in the future, and it'll be worth much more, and it's going to be a viable sort of ongoing thing. Whereas if he takes it
reasonable
private,
argument to make.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to know what exactly went on, but it seemed like they were just trying to block it because they felt it wasn't something they liked the idea of, which is very odd. But then,
well, they're entitled to not fancy it, but it's a public company. It's not within their purview. It shouldn't be within their power to act unilaterally in that way. They're supposed to be custodians for the shareholders. Then, it's not like one person owned it and Elon Musk went, I want to buy it off you, and then that person go, it's not for sale. It's owned by the fucking shareholders, so you have to consult the shareholders. That's the really bizarre thing about it. Anyway, in the end, they got to a point where they thought, oh shit, we better accept it. So they didn't even let it get to one of these sort of tender offers where from my limited understanding of sort of financial terminology, a tender offer is where Musk just goes straight to the shareholders and just says, look, sell me your shares at this price. And then there'll be some structure whereby they can sort of act collectively. They decided to preempt that. Some people suspected that, and by the way, to your point about why he picked this moment, he could have been thinking about it for a while. It could have been opportunistic on a sort of historical low for the share price. But a lot of people reckon, and this is, normally you wouldn't find it plausible, but with Musk, it is a bit more plausible. There's a US satirical site called Babylon Bee, and they send up stuff, and they recently got kicked off Twitter, and they're conservative. They're sort of religious right. They're not evangelical religious right. They're not constantly godding it up the whole time. But that's the side of the political spectrum they're coming from in the States, which tends to be in opposition to the sort of what they call the liberal side, which I think is the biggest fucking misnomer ever in the States. But there you go. Because as we know, Pierre, I think myself was quite liberal. Anyway, and they did this one spoof. So there's all satirical. Everyone understands what satire is. And there is this, there's this very senior member of US Armed Forces, I believe an admiral. He used to be a bloke and has transitioned to a bird. I can't remember what his name or her name was before or after. Doesn't really matter. And she, as she is now, was named Woman of the Year by Time magazine or something like that.
Yeah.
And, and there's plenty of people, I won't get too deep into the culture wars, but there's plenty of people, a lot of them women, who get offended by people who were born blokes and lived most of their life as blokes suddenly being called Woman of the Year. You can see that from their point of view. I won't recite it because it features some words that would get me in trouble if I said it, but Dave Chappelle did a great sketch on that, but juxtaposing it into race. And I'll leave that there, go and look it up. But the punchline is Eminem wins a certain award, and you can join the dots.
I remember that bit.
Yeah. It just features a word that only Dave Chappelle can use and not me. But so this admiral gets Woman of the Award. So Babylon Bee just did a little skit saying awarding the Man of the Year award. Okay, and it's satirical, but they're also obviously making a culture wars point.
Yeah.
And Twitter kicked him off for this bit of satire. And a lot of people reckon that was like the sort of straw that broke the camel's back for Musk. He was just like, oh, this is bullshit. And there will be lots of other things that provoked him. But to answer your point, that could have been a catalyst. And so they've accepted it. And then the hilarious thing about it for me has just been the amount of people losing their shit. And so I wrote two stories on it this week. The first one was just after it happened. Elon Musk, his first tweet after it happened was him just doing a screenshot of his canned quote from the press release. I'll read it out because it's relatively short. His quote is, "Free speech is a bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. I also want to make Twitter better than ever by improving this, that and the other." So he's putting his cards on the table and saying this is a free speech move, but not just as a free speech fanatic as he might be, but he links that to the successful functioning of a Western democracy, principally the US. And it seems so. So I wrote a piece just analysing the concepts he put in that: free speech, the digital town square, new features that he might have in it, and the other point he made, which is about increasing trust in the platform, because a lot of people don't trust it, quite rightly. Not only do they not trust it, like I hardly ever tweet because I need my job and I don't trust myself to not on a Friday night tweet something really fucking stupid that then goes viral and gets me sacked. But on top of that, a lot of people don't trust Twitter to treat them fairly and to not kick them off like they did the Babylon Bee.
Yeah.
And so I wrote that, and then a follow-up I wrote was just watching the response, and basically a sort of moral panic among certain sections of society, just going, oh my God, Musk being in charge of Twitter is going to be the worst thing ever. But all he's really publicly said is in favour of free speech, so I think it's reasonable to interpret this backlash as basically being a backlash against someone who's claimed they want to have more free speech. In other words, the backlash is from censorious people.
Does that mean they're all coming back then?
Well, there's been a weird trend.
Left when people are leaving, right when people are joining.
No. Apparently they get like 6 million more users, but I'm saying like, is Elon going to be like, all right, I'm in charge now. Okay, Trump, you're back. Etc. You're back.
Well, that's one area of speculation. I think he should. There has been a lot of change just in the week since he made his bid, and it can't be directly because of Musk, because he doesn't own it yet. We've still got to go through months of due process to get all sorted out and be voted on and be approved by regulators and all that sort of thing. And to be honest, I wouldn't put it past regulators to try and block it, although there's another side to that. But yes, it does seem that suddenly accounts that are associated with more the right side of US politics are benefiting, and accounts that are more on the left side. But it could just be what you just alluded to, Ian. It could just be natural churn in that people who had previously felt alienated or estranged or locked out of Twitter now feel emboldened, and they've come back, and people are coming on and making all these culture war statements like a man can't turn into a woman and stuff like that. Even that would get you kicked off before.
Yeah. Even
that sort of previously biologically redundant point would get you kicked off because it becomes as this culture war touch point. So that's all interesting, and I've gone on for a while, so I'll ask for your sort of top line hot take on it, Ian. But I just think, apart from the fact it's remarkable that an individual, and a relatively maverick one, albeit one of the richest men in the world, can come in. It's almost like in some ways Musk is like a Trump of the business world. He doesn't have the Trump persona, but he does have that outsider thing. He does have that sending random tweets that you don't expect of someone so elite in the world.
Yeah.
And he does have that sort of loose cannon, free radical spanner in the works kind of feel about him. So I basically love it all, and it's right up my street. But what do you think, Ian? Are you a fan of all this move?
I mean, I like the idea of what he's saying on free speech for sure, and I think these platforms are. I totally agree that some of these platforms are too censorious, and the example you gave is a really good one actually that I didn't refer to in my stories, because something like that clearly is then taking a kind of not even. I mean, it's just not even. There's nothing offensive about the thing they took off.
No,
it's satire. You can read anything into it that you want.
It's just sensitive in a cultural way.
You know, I mean, another one that I often give, which I don't think Twitter did, but the Facebook. I think it was Facebook actually when they were taking down commentary about the origins of coronavirus, when people were suggesting last year that it might have come out of a Wuhan lab, which is now accepted as a likely cause of it.
But for a while it was.
Deemed to be that's not the establishment view, and they're actually taking stuff down.
Yep.
And it was only when Biden sort of considered that to be a realistic, a plausible scenario for how it started, that they stopped doing that. And those sorts of things shouldn't be going on. So when someone comes along and says that he wants to make it more sort of anything goes, and we're not going to have an environment where that's going on, then I think it sounds like a good thing. My worry would be, is he the person to do? I mean, we're sort of taking him at his word in a way to do that. And
my first piece, actually, the headline said exactly that. It said, "Let's take Musk at his word."
I mean, I don't like Twitter, I have to be quite honest with you. I don't think it is the digital town square. I don't think it's a particularly good analogy. I think.
Why do you think it isn't?
Because I think it's an attention. It's got a sort of attention deficit format of a social media platform.
So do you think there is a digital town square at all?
Not really. I don't think it's a very good analogy.
But I think it's the closest to one.
Yeah.
I think it's deeply inefficient and limited, but it's the closest place we've got to a global environment where people have chats.
It is. The reason it doesn't work for me is because, old sort of European town squares, were places where, everybody could come and mingle, and you'd accept walking there alongside people who had opposite views, and there might be sort of long discussions about putting the world to rights. The sort of thing that goes on
standing on soapboxes and
there's probably the odd
shit.
fight that breaks out.
Yeah.
To me, Twitter is a sort of toxic environment where the whole way it's set up is to be short, sharp, that's the whole purpose of it.
It seems to actually reward the worst behaviour.
It's this trend towards not being able to focus on anything for too long, really, that I think is, one of the evils maybe in modern day technology, that everybody's not able to sort of engage in a discussion that lasts more than half an hour. And I mean, it's actually encouraging the podcast format, and the sort of stuff people like Joe Rogan do is a bit of an antidote to that. But to me, Twitter's about the opposite of all those things. And I think what Twitter is increasing, and this is the worry for me with what we just talked about with some of these user trends, and we don't know. It take a while to sort of figure out what's happening in terms of our right-wing people joining it and our left-wing people leaving it. But it could just become, this sort of people going into their own little kind of echo chambers, if you like, and not wanting to, you've got this group called Parler, for instance, which we've talked about before, which is perceived as being a kind of social media platform for Trump supporters. That's generally how it's.
And there's others. There's like Getter and Gab and all these sorts of places.
That's great, but those aren't really places where you're going to get vigorous debate and people exchanging.
But you're right,
opinions.
and they'll be an echo chamber.
They're echo chambers, and therefore maybe
they
Twitter
necessarily want to
becomes,
be, by the way. I mean, it's a point worth making. They're not necessarily designed to be echo chambers. It's just that most people would rather be on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then those that are kicked off Twitter end up at places like Parler, Getter, Gab, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I'm just, because people have got, because he's such a divisive figure, it seems, maybe this ends up being something that exacerbates that trend, and...
Why do you think it might exacerbate that trend?
Because he's a very divisive figure.
Just because of him?
Yeah, and the other thing is, the problem for me with Twitter is not the ownership of Twitter per se. It's the fact that Twitter has come along and taken a decision to take certain types of content down and weigh in a way that I don't think should be left up to Twitter, kind of thing.
I think
and someone like Musk coming along and saying, I'm not going to do that. Well, great, but I don't think a company owner shouldn't be setting the rules of the game, kind of thing. Okay. He's got a vested interest in promoting himself on Twitter, on promoting his own companies on Twitter. I mean, you alluded to this before we came in, that he's put things out in the past that have affected stock prices. One of the concerns about it is, does he use Twitter to be, he says that it's going to be a free-for-all and the algorithm's going to be open sourced and there's no favoritism. Okay, great, but maybe we're just taking him at his word for that. There's clearly a vested interest in Musk not doing that and having set up in a way where it promotes content that he likes, and it isn't that kind of thing. And therefore, to me, the problem, I've no objections with him coming along and buying it, as long as he's going by the financial rules of the game, and he doesn't seem to be breaking anything there. It's entirely up. There's companies that are bigger than what does Twitter make in annual revenues? $5 billion a year or something, roughly.
Don't know off the top
There's
of my
companies that are bigger than that are privately owned. Yeah.
Yeah. Like Dell.
So if he's, I don't have any objections to that, but I think these social media platforms, if he really wants it to be a digital town square and the free speech platform of the future, then it's up to somebody else to sort of monitor that. We shouldn't be just letting Musk be the person that kind of...
I've got some thoughts on that. Yeah. Did you want to say something, Jim?
I think the biggest problem with Twitter is that people can hide their identity in the bots. That's the main problem. So you don't exactly know if these views are real. That's the biggest issue, because if you're gullible and oh, look at all these people. First of all, they're actually computers, or you don't know who they are. And he's pledged, I mean, he can say whatever he wants. It sounds like a big job, but he would verify everyone by some date or something.
By how? Yeah, well, I mean...
I don't know. And kick out some bots. I don't know how.
Yeah, so the response to both Ian and your points is sort of collective, which is, yes, totally. I mean, if we're just talking about power, this is one of the problems that people don't understand about censorship. They'll be in favour of censorship, and then when Musk wants to buy Twitter, they'll be like, but then he's got too much power. Well, they were in favour of power when they thought it benefited them.
Yeah.
And now they think it won't. They're not in favour of power, which is obviously fucking incoherent.
Yeah.
And I really think, and I'll expand on this in a bit because I don't want to take away from responding to you, I really think that's what this ultimately comes down to, is power, because I think politicians and people who seek power see that one of the most effective ways of doing so is through social media and through Twitter. I mean, it's hard to argue that Trump won the election in 2016 through his prolific use of Twitter. And I don't think it's a coincidence that he's been kicked off it.
Yeah.
At the moment they could. The moment he sort of substantially not just lost the election, but then the processes of him handing over the keys to the White House happened, they kicked him the fuck off. I know there are reasons. I know there's January 6th and all that stuff, but they didn't waste any time. But to respond to both your points, I think it will come down to whether or not he can put things in place that are transparent enough that he could convince people, this comes back to the trust thing, that he could convince people that even if he was dicking about and trying to amplify things that were beneficial to SpaceX or Tesla, or trying to dampen criticism of himself, that those things would be transparent and people could see it and criticize him for it. If he doesn't create that degree of transparency, then obviously he's going to be completely open to those criticisms.
He is, yeah.
And rightly so, because I find him plausible. He said he's on the spectrum, so I've got a sort of soft spot for him there.
Yeah.
He's a bit different. He's not corporate. He says quirky things. He's obviously an incredible brain and entrepreneur. So all those things naturally make me a bit biased towards him. But he's still one bloke, and I agree, a concentration of power. Just because a concentration power is in someone you like doesn't make it any better than it's in the hands of someone you don't like. That's just hypocrisy.
Yeah, I don't dislike him. I've actually got a lot of respect for him. But I still think that, I'm sort of arguing for the role of a regulator, and I don't want to be taken that I think we need somebody, looking over this in a kind of overly rigorous way. And it sounds like I'm sort of in support of censorship. I mean, one thing I didn't like, as I was just saying, was this whole, Facebook taking down content that was perfectly fair comment on the origins of COVID. Now, that's, to me, the role where you need a sort of authority to kind of say that's not right that you're doing that. If this is a town square environment and you should be able to say anything you want, then to me, it's anything goes unless it oversteps the mark of things like inciting violence.
Quite whole. Well, his point, and one which I've made for years, and I'm so pleased to see him making it, is obviously speech does have its upper limits.
Yeah.
You know, I've said loads of times, I can't go on Twitter, give your address, and say someone throw a firebomb through Ian's window. But that, I presume it would be illegal if I said that. So it should be law, and law is flawed. But at least we can all agree that we have to abide by the law.
It's entirely,
So that should be the ceiling for free speech. Then the question is,
It's a bit rich coming from you guys.
why?
You just said earlier in the pod,
Blatant
you
law
broke
breakers.
it.
Yeah. But when you break the law, they always say that ignorance is no defence. But you know, when you break the law, normally you know you're breaking the law. Like if you're speeding and you've just thought, fuck it.
yeah.
Hopefully I won't get caught. Or if you score a bit of ganj, you know, most people have scored a bit of dope or something even more fucking high powered than that in their time, and they know they're doing something illegal, but they fancy it, so they do it.
Yeah. I mean, I just think this whole... I mean, we've talked about this before and it's quite arcane, but this whole sort of Section 230 flawed legislation about whether these platforms get treated like publishers or something different, and whether they can be held accountable for the content that users put on it. They seem to use that to suit them, basically. Is what they've done in the past. And to me, there's a role for regulators to step in and say it's not right for Parler to be taken down by AWS.
Totally.
It's not right for content to be disabled because somebody said something you don't like politically. You know, it's not right for those things to happen. Not the opposite, where a regulator's go and get rid of this, get rid of that.
Which is what's happening in the UK, by the way.
And that's where I think...
My mate Doris...
Yeah, totally. And that's where I think an authority figure that's set up that way to look at things in a very light touch way, but make sure that actually things don't get overly, that we don't have situations where people are taken off because they've said something that leans too much one way or the other politically, like the satire example you gave. That's where I'd like to see. Sort of,
I completely agree.
And I don't like the idea of that sort of decision making being left to an owner of a company. Because it's the same as what's happening at the moment, really, with Twitter. It's up to... They do what they want to do, don't they? And they take things off, and and maybe Trump won't, great, but we don't know that. And he's certainly... some of his... Well, he's done things in... I mean, he goes on about free speech a lot. As I say, I like all the sounds he makes about it and all the noises, but then he's quite thin-skinned at times.
Yes,
he's blocked people on Twitter.
Well, that's fine. I haven't got a problem with blocking. People overreact to blocking. But like when he piled into that English guy trying to make a submarine, that clearly pointed to a brittleness that was unfortunate in his personality.
It does, but I think the blocking... I know blocking isn't the same as actual censorship. You're just stopping somebody from following you or whatever.
Certainly not, but often people do conflate it with censorship.
It just doesn't look good, though.
Well, fuck it. I really don't care.
It's a bit childish.
Look, can you imagine Trump?
I get a bit of
can you imagine Musk?
Whenever I write anything about Nokia from someone.
Right.
I think I mentioned them before. Because clearly these people only want you to say nice things about Nokia.
And they just get the arsehole.
Yeah, and there's been a few tweets this week about, this analysis is just really shit because he didn't point this out.
Are you segueing?
And I could... No, I'm not segueing because I probably haven't got around to Nokia yet.
Have you had any hassle over your coverage of their quarterlies?
I always do. I always get these same two guys who purport to be investors.
Well, they're doing it publicly. Call them out. Who are these?
I just can't be bothered to interact. Okay, right. They can, as far as I'm concerned, they can say what I want. But if having written some of the stuff I've written recently about free speech and letting it all go and whatever, I'd feel embarrassed if I was going to start blocking those guys, because it's almost like...
No, that's fair enough, but I still think it's personal choice. If you're someone like Musk, who's probably got incoming aggro by the shitload, it's quite hardcore, that beer.
I'll have to nip to the thing at some point.
Right,
you might have to carry on with Pierre.
Yeah, no worries. I think, you'll have people, let's say you got a really bad faith actor just calling you a dick every time you post anything. Of course the sensible thing to do is just block them.
Yeah.
Obviously then it's down to the discretion of the individual to decide what's a bad faith actor, and some people probably do it wrong and they block people who are legitimately trying to engage and they just can't be bothered. But no, I don't really give much of a fuck about blocking.
Do you know one of the things I think it's not quite free speech? I think some of the people... I hate this term hate speech, because
I certainly do.
But I think there's... If you take a step back from that and you think of what Twitter's like, it's not a very nice environment to be in sometimes, is it? And I think there's one of the concerns is not necessarily people who are worried about, what's about rules, for instance, or about censorship, they're just thinking to themselves, Twitter for me can be quite an unpleasant place to be sometimes, and the idea of having somebody there with a sort of anything goes approach, laissez-faire, what you say you can get away with, probably scares them. They're just thinking, I don't really want.
Then go on fucking Twitter.
No, but this is what I'm saying. They're not calling for censorship, but they're just thinking, right, actually, I don't want to be involved with it anymore.
But most people who are calling for censorship are calling for it on their behalf. They're what I call client seekers. They're basically saying, oh, but these poor people, they can't do that. These people on this part of the culture war might get abused. There might be bigotry.
But I'm not talking about people like that. I'm talking about people even a little bit like me.
Yeah.
I don't particularly like Twitter for the reasons you've just said. If you write something on Twitter late on a Friday, you've got to be really careful about what you do.
Damn right.
I don't actually use it at all.
But I think we understand that because we're journalists and we publish. I mean, I self-publish, and I know that when something goes up on Telecoms.com, my reputation hangs on it, so I have to consider my words.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people who aren't even in journalism probably think that way as well.
Yeah.
They think, I don't want to engage with it too much because actually it can be a bit nasty sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure at the back of their minds, they're thinking, if someone comes along who's got a much more hands-off, let's just let it all hang out kind of approach to Twitter, maybe it becomes an even narkier environment than it is at the moment. And actually, I'm not calling for censorship of it, but I just don't really want anything to do with it anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying with Elon coming along and doing what he's doing, is that maybe people just go, maybe a certain type of people goes, I don't want.
That was something I wanted to address from your previous thing. Is you're completely right, and the tricky bit, it'd be easy for Elon Musk to say, come in and go, right, free for all, except for national law.
Yeah.
Okay, and that should be his baseline. But then on top of that, he's got to put in sort of game mechanics. He can do some really clever stuff, and he's all into AI and shit like that.
Yeah.
Like game theory, where game theory sort of just describes these choices like a prisoner's dilemma, where you just set up these interactions that kind of nudge people in a certain direction or give people choices but try and incentivize them in certain ways. If he uses game theory in the correct way, like right now there's a social psychologist called Jonathan Haidt who has spent a lot of time focusing on social media. And he basically blames social media for a hell of a lot of the bullshit that goes on, especially in the States. And bear in mind, the States, they're an order of magnitude more polarised than we are here.
I think he's got a point.
I think he's got a point as well. But he actually traces it back to not the invention of social media, but when they started putting tools like the like button and the quote tweet button and things like that in. And he, as a academic social psychologist, sort of looks at it and goes, when you've got a like thing, then obviously not only do you have ways of people sort of grading what you do, but then you also have incentives. You'll have like audience capture. You have incentives on the part of the tweeter to come out with stuff that's more likely to get likes, because it becomes a very Pavlovian like reward feedback loop. You're like, oh, if I do more of this, it's a bit like what we do as journalists. I know you do this less because you don't keep an eye on reads, but as the editor, I keep an eye on reads, and I know there's a certain kind of story is more likely to get reads than another. Yeah. So I've got a natural incentive loop, a natural sort of Pavlovian feedback loop going on there to make me want to do that. And I think that applies to everyone. If you assume that everyone's a self-publisher, everyone's a journalist on Twitter, then, if you have more of this sort of thing, I mean, there's certain stuff that's always going to get a lot of traction. Let's say you put salacious images up or something like that. But really, in-your-face, leery opinions are going to get more traction than more sort of nuanced, like, there's two sides to this type of stuff. So it incentivises the more extreme, shrill behaviour. If he can get, and I don't necessarily have any answers, although, if Elon Musk, if you're looking to pay someone sort of £1 million a year to come and give you some top tips, then but not I'm looking to leave employers. But let me just quickly finish. If he can get certain mechanics built into it that incentivise a more benign environment, that wouldn't that do something to allay the fears that you just articulated?
Yeah, I guess it's whether I don't know if he can do. I mean, I just don't know if that kind of setup, as I say, this short, sharp commentary, and with the trends that we see going on at the moment anyway in politics generally, there's so much polarisation. Maybe it's just got to a point where I just don't know if people like that kind of thing anyway. I mean, I love the idea of if you could have a proper online platform for debate, and everybody gets involved, and we're all really tolerant of views on opposite sides. But actually, have people ever really been like that? I mean, people go into pubs and they sit at a table, and you get like the table full of old men who all use words that the rest of us don't today because they were born in 1940, and no one gives a toss about what they're doing because we can't hear it and we don't pay any attention. Whereas if they were doing that on Twitter, everybody else can see it.
You're talking, about politically incorrect words.
Yeah. But the point I'm making is that everybody else can see what goes on when people like that try and engage in some kind of little thing on Twitter, and then you get other people pouring in, and then it all becomes quite spiteful and actually sort of, as I say, quite an unpleasant place to be. And I just don't know if the model itself is
it's hard to get your head around it, because there's all sorts of things you could think about. There's that thing I put in my book of having a sponsorship system where you only get onto the platform if you're invited by someone else and that person's to some degree responsible for your behaviour.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't think it through that much. It's just an idea that I sort of chucked out there. Other ones might be to have some kind of micro payment system, which would presumably, that might do something to resolve the bot thing that you were talking about, Pierre.
Well, he wants to weaken the advertisers, doesn't he? It's one of the things he suggested by charging sort of subscription fees potentially.
Well, yeah, because the problem.
Wait, let me finish your point. How the could think.
Well, so like a micropayment thing, like in order to respond or retweet or amplify or do some bit of mechanics within it, you make some micropayment. It could be as little as 1p.
Yeah.
But obviously that's going to eradicate the bots, you'd think, until they catch up and find some way of paying, if indeed they think it's worth it.
More capture.
Well, you mean the capture, like how many of these pictures have got a bike in them?
Clearly that doesn't work.
No. So there's those sorts of things. What were you just saying?
I was just saying one of the things I think that he's also suggested is that one of the problems with Twitter is the model whereby big brands don't want to have their names next to anything that might be slightly controversial, and therefore him coming along and saying, well, it's going to be more free speechy and you can say what you want. There's this fear in the financial community that it just. I mean, actually, if it goes private, people will stop. Equity analysts will stop covering it in the way they do anyway. But
advertising. No, you're completely right.
But the worry is it scares off. It scares off.
I don't see how the ad model is compatible with his aspiration.
Hence his suggestion, I think, that he's made of a sort of subscription model where you charge. I think he's proposed about $2 a month or something. Yeah. So you're talking about 24. I think the problem with that commercially, if you're looking at this from the business angle, which we haven't really talked about, is apparently the kinds of people who would do that, who'd be willing to pay that kind of fee, which obviously tends to be more enthusiastic Twitter users. Advertisers are already making more money out of those. They already make more money out of advertising linked to those kinds of people anyway. If you look at what the equity analysts are saying, so you're automatically, the implication is that your money's going down.
But the flip side is because a much more laissez-faire approach to content moderation on the site is incompatible with advertisers. I think everyone understands that. When you've got an ad funding model, you're kind of at the mercy of advertisers, and we're very lucky in our jobs in that we're not. We have a hard separation of church and state. We have a firewall between the commercial side. To the best of my knowledge, without giving any trade secrets away, you don't get bollocked by a commercial person for writing something shitty about someone who's advertising with light reading, and that certainly doesn't happen to me. But a hell of a lot of media sites, and social media, as the name strongly implies, is a media site. That separation isn't there. And so, yes, if, I don't know, let's say you got a big advertiser, pick a telco, like AT&T is a big advertiser.
Yeah.
And they're currently going through a whole thing where they're bigging up some sort of culture war thing. Maybe there's fucking rainbows everywhere or whatever. And they say, well, we don't want any of our ads next to someone who's being a dick on culture war stuff, maybe, pushing back on whether a man can become a woman or something like that. And so then then they've got to introduce an algorithm, which means that AT&T's shit never comes up against someone who's gender critical or whatever.
Yeah.
And that all gets complicated, and it whittles down. You hear about people getting demonetised on YouTube.
But it'd go on forever, wouldn't it? You'd be developing algorithms for all sorts of
exactly.
scenarios.
So the solution to that is not be ad funded at all.
If someone wants to take offence from something, they're going to find something else to take offence from.
Exactly. Well, this is my point about censorship. Apart from the fact that I'm not a fan. Okay, Ian's going to leave the room, so I'm going to pick this up with you, Pierre. Apart from the fact I'm not a fan of censorship as a principle. I don't think it's very practicable forever. You can sort of keep censoring. Like, you'll have certain things you're sensitive about and certain things that you're laissez-faire about. Thank you to your country for giving us that extra excellent phrase. But you're just you. Should Pierre be the person that determines what everyone can see? What do you think about all that stuff?
I think it's a constant dance. You know, I think it's a spectrum. There's no hard line in the floor, so it's a constant fluid adjustment. But as humans, we don't understand that. We want it one or the other.
We want absolutes.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the thought of what Elon Musk is initially proposing of just having no rules other than legality? So you can't call for someone to be murdered, but if you want to say something that's out of order or bitchy or contentious, then just let it go because that's free speech.
We'll see how it goes. I think it's worth trying, and people, because it's okay, maybe they won't feel enticed to do it. They'll be like, it's not edgy anymore to say those things. So they'll just go, I don't know. It's like, when you tell people, you know what, you can smoke whatever you want now. Yeah. They kind of stop finding it cool.
Yeah, and they've done that in the States, and there's states where you can have a joint and everyone hasn't gone mad.
Yeah.
Yes, well, exactly, and that fits in with more, the thing that you take the piss out of me about, which is the sort of classical liberal thing. Just let people do their stuff. I made a point in the most recent bit of coverage I did about it is, freedom's risky. Like, to be free. Freedom isn't free. There's a hefty fucking fee. That's Team America, if anyone's wondering. A fundamental freedom is a freedom to take risks and to be stupid and to fuck your life up. And this is where I really hate these sort of patrician hall monitor types who say no, we must eliminate risk, not just for ourselves but for everyone, and we will be this is what ultimately comes down to sort of move off into a more sort of political, social, philosophical side of things. For me, is any restriction is who decides. Okay, someone's got to decide. We could all agree that having a go at someone for their sex or their race or their sexuality or their physical appearance or whatever is out of order. Don't think anyone's arguing that's a desirable form of communication. But then if we ban all of that,
appearance.
You what?
Not sure about physical appearance.
Physical appearance, well. Yeah,
well, I mean, I'm just saying.
But if you can't hassle someone for their race, why is it all right to hassle someone for looking ugly?
But that's why you've got to be quite careful about this kind of stuff, though, isn't it? I mean, comedians take the piss out of the way people look all the time.
Yeah.
And it's still okay to make sort of fat jokes. It was nobody made. I mean, the whole Chris Rock joke about someone with alopecia.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people actually saying that. The reaction seems to be what he said was offensive. If you're trying to defend Will Smith's reaction of thumping him or slapping him, rather, it was an offensive joke. But not
if
a lot
he
of
knew, I don't think he knew.
Not a lot of people are describing it as hate speech, are they?
Well,
and it's discriminatory.
Well, so there's
I know
the
there
phrase.
are elements that are, but
there's the phrase, and this is what gets to the nub of it, as far as I'm concerned, is when people start introducing terms like hate speech, which have become ubiquitous in UK law, and is at the centre of Nadine Dorris's censorship thing. And interestingly, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was one of the leaders in The Spectator, written by Fraser Nelson, the editor, having a go at this online safety bill and saying it's, a census charter or whatever, however they sort of categorise it. And that was in The Spectator, and then Nadine Dorris pushed back on social media, going, respectfully, but going, Fraser, this is why I think you're wrong. And then he published another thing on The Spectator, probably more in the sort of more ad hoc section, electronic section, just going, well, this is why your rebuttal is bullshit, although he's more polite than that.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it is, because I remember covering it, I haven't got the story up, but I remember when I was covering it, and we certainly spoke about it on the pod at the time because I was so incensed. There was a bit that just sort of says Ofcom will be empowered to force social media sites to take down, I think the term is hateful content. But no one defines what hateful content is. For example, if you say, I hate offal, I don't like liver or kidneys.
I hate people who wear glasses.
I hate people who wear glasses. I hate people who've only got about 3 T-shirts in their whole fucking wardrobe. So, I mean, you're
discriminating against me because of my wardrobe, Scott.
You have about 3
I didn't mention you. You brought that up. I've got more than 3. I haven't worn this one for a while.
I love how you feel compelled to say it. I've got more than 3.
Actually.
I'll have you know.
So fuck you. Whereas you got about 3 long sleeve tops.
Yeah, I have about 3 T-shirts. And I have elbows.
All wearing out.
Elbows.
I don't think anyone in this room over-invests in clothing, do they?
Definitely not.
But so you're allowed to hate things. And you're allowed to hate people, like you're allowed to hate politicians. You know, I felt slightly self-conscious walking through DCMS, past Nadine Dorris's office, knowing that I've been fairly disrespectful towards her. Yeah. Although I did just send her people a thing going, if she ever wants to chat about this stuff, I'm happy to. And she might have seen it, and she might give me a look going, oh, you're that cheeky bastard, are you? But then again, she's a politician. She's presumably got quite thick skin. And people talk about hating politicians all the time. You know, the entire political left talks about hating Boris Johnson constantly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the converse is true about Keir Starmer or whoever. So there's lots of hate flying around, but then they just determine arbitrarily certain things are hate speech, but it's ill-defined. I mean, we know what they really mean. They mean they talk about protected characteristics, but the stable of the category of protected characteristics constantly evolves.
Yeah.
So it probably started with race. Everyone can agree that racism is out of order. We can think of the awful racist incidents like Stephen Lawrence 20 years ago and all that sort of thing. Obviously, if a person of a different race had been randomly stabbed to death in the street, that would be, in my opinion, equally awful. But there is a certain more emotive element to it, that it seemed to have been driven by racial animus rather than just sadism or drunkenness or whatever. And then you get sex. You know, people say gender, but I insist on saying sex because sex is your biological as opposed to whatever the fuck gender means. I don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're a bloke or a woman. And then you get, you know, sexual preference. Obviously, there's certainly in the past been homophobia, probably more strongly towards gay men than gay women in the past, and we can all agree that's out of order. And so these are all protected characteristics, and it's hard to oppose any of them. You don't want to be the one going, no, we should hassle gay blokes. We should discriminate. Of course you don't want to be that person. But the problem is it metastasizes, and then you get other protected characteristics, and you get, you know, like right now within that world, it's the issue of trans that's been most adopted. And I'm not going to adopt a position on trans one way or the other here. I'm just highlighting it as the thing that comes up most often.
Well, the one I've got a particular issue with is religion.
Right. So you can have a go at Christians, but not Muslims or something like that.
Well, I think all religions are fair game as far as I'm concerned. I actually encourage having a go at religion. I don't think we should feel at all embarrassed about lampooning.
It's an ideology,
Islam.
a dogma, or whatever.
It's an idea system. Why should any idea system be immune from criticism, basically, and that's what they're saying when they. So I hate all this stuff about sort of anti-religious commentary, and I mean, obviously,
but it's also selective.
It is very selective
because you can have a go, and I'm not trying to make a big point here. I'm someone who grew up in a Christian environment as an English person, who married someone who grew up in a Muslim environment, an Iranian person.
Yeah.
I'm completely agnostic, so I don't have a dog in that fight. But I do know it's considered much more out of order to have a go at Islam than it is at Christianity.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. So, I mean, there's like Douglas Murray's doing the rounds. I can't listen to a podcast without him cropping up at the moment because he's trying to flog a book. But one of his central points is if you have a go at the whole protected characteristic thing works in one direction and not the other. So you can have a go this way, but not that way.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're going to be absolutely principled, it should apply equally in both directions.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not.
Well, it also leads to abuses in itself, like situations in America where you have school children who are white in schools being told they should feel ashamed of slavery and
yes, the sort of proxy ancestral guilt type of thing.
Which does what to a 6-year-old's mind? It's,
well, exactly. I mean, they have all sorts of crazy stuff going on in the States. So it's hilarious to behold, to spectate.
And why should they feel bad about what the what someone did 200 years ago who's got no connection to them at all. It's outrageous.
But to reel it back in to the point before Pierre starts rolling his eyes again.
No, I have a point about Musk and Twitter that we haven't talked about, actually.
Oh, go for it before I...
Yeah, maybe we haven't. The best feature that he wants to bring back is the edit button.
Yeah.
That would be great.
But that's got problems. Because let's say you've tweeted something and it's had a lot of engagement, and then you edit it after the engagement. What does that mean?
Yeah, the same way you cannot really edit a YouTube video.
You shouldn't be able to. Or the same way media shouldn't be able to edit their stories after they put them up, but they fucking do.
It would just say edited on the thing. So then you know, look, a lot of likes,
you're right.
but it's edited.
You're right, that is the simplest
I know
answer.
usually, not always, but usually when I change a story...
you put a note.
So, for instance, I did something about Nokia withdrawing from Russia, and then Nokia got in touch and went to clarify the fact that, because I think the original story I wrote, it was like unclear if it meant fully pulling out or sort of continuing to maintain networks, and the clarification was largely on that position, and therefore, you know, I updated it, but put in a qualifier at the bottom to indicate. But I wouldn't say this story's been updated if I corrected a spelling mistake or something like that.
No, and so there's always grey areas. So you're saying that if the sort of substantial meaning or
I think you should point that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. No, I agree.
Be like a tweet from like 5 years ago that says, "I hate bagels." It's like, actually, I initially said I hate pancakes.
or if it's from 5 years ago, you go, I quite fancy bagels now.
Yeah.
They've grown on me. Yes. No, I mean, I agree. The edit button is one that, you know, obviously exists on Facebook, and I presume I don't really use any other social media. I presume it exists on Instagram. Does it? Does anyone use Instagram?
Well, I know young people use it. My son uses it.
Right. I mean, you obviously can't edit the photo. Well, I suppose you could. You can re-upload it. I don't know.
You can edit a LinkedIn post, a Facebook post, I believe.
And you can't on Twitter. So that's a desirable thing. But yeah, so these are all these sort of tweaks to features he could do. And I completely take your point, Ian. Until he does them, we should reserve judgment, just because he seems to be a little bit different to your average Silicon Valley sort of.
Also, I was thinking, I don't think he's going to hold it very long. I'd probably just like...
You mean cash out?
Yeah, right? Do you see him owning Twitter for many years?
So if we take him at face value, and he really thinks that Twitter is vital to the successful functioning, let's say he only gives a fuck about the States, that he really thinks that, and it's fine, you don't have to think it, you're looking sceptical. But let's say he does, then I think he would feel he's got to put in a lot of very durable changes that would survive him no longer having so much influence on it before he'd flog it, if that's what he cares about. I don't believe this is a business venture. I think that he could have spent $44 billion on a bunch of other stuff. I do believe this is something other. Ideological's too strong, but I find it easy to believe he does actually give a shit about the quality of the public discourse. He looks at the States, he sees how terribly polarised and fractured and sort of mutually antagonistic it is. He also sees, to your point about bots, you know, America's geopolitical competitors like China and Russia obviously see this as an Achilles heel to sow further division within the country. You know, it's not that difficult to just throw a sort of culture wars hand grenade into Twitter and have everyone freak out and dig opposing trenches. Or
troll farms, who are real people but just acting as other people.
Yeah, and all that. And I think, you know, one other point I want to make, I think, so you've come up with a couple of examples, Ian. I'm just thinking, what's the time? We should probably move it on pretty soon. Okay, so I'll start wrapping up then, if that's all right with you two. In the name of moving it on.
Much all right.
Yes, yes, if you fucking would, Scott. So you come up with some examples of the sort of arbitrary and capricious nature of the sort of content moderation. I think the single most significant one was the story about Hunter Biden's laptop, Hunter being Joe Biden's son, who seems to have led a fairly troubled existence involving doing a fair bit of crack, as far as I can tell. I hope I don't get sued for that. That seems to be in the public domain.
For some reason?
You what?
And he documented it?
Right, yeah. No, he's come out. Well, they like to do these sort of struggle sessions sometimes, the Yanks, for reasons best known to them. But the thing is, this story came out just before the last US general election.
No, sorry, that's not what I meant. I meant like he took pictures of him in bad situations.
Yeah, with whores and stuff.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Well, because he's off his tits, isn't he?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, yeah,
it's like the Pamela Anderson sex tapes, mate. Yeah. Why would you do it?
Yeah.
And while he was off his tits, he went and took a laptop into somewhere to be repaired. He probably spilt some champagne on it or something else. And he just left it there, and then this person got hold of it, got access to the hard drive, found a bunch of emails, which basically seemed to imply, I can't remember the precise nature of the story, but it seemed to imply some degree of corruption, funnily enough in Ukraine, involving Hunter and at least insinuating some involvement of Joe Biden himself. And the feeling seemed to be that this could be on an election, and US elections typically on a knife edge. I think this one ended up being quite comfortably won, but as ever in the States, it's just a few key swing states, isn't it? And the feeling was that this could be one of these things that swings it for people, because people make democratic decisions based on fuck all. And most of us don't really know what we're doing. We just go like, last election, probably most people voted for Bojo just because they didn't want a commie in charge.
Well, I think that's the case at the moment. They don't want an incompetent.
Oh, we didn't talk about it. See, it was a landslide. Anyway, in France.
Oh, the France one. Yeah. But even in the France one, I think the French were presented with a poor choice.
Let's not go there.
No, hang on. It wasn't as much of a landslide as it was last time, was it?
She got more than usual.
She got about a quarter, I think, last time round, and this time she's up at 40%.
40-odd%.
Really?
Yes. He absolutely crucified her in the last one.
Yeah.
And this time round, she got
definitely closing the gap. If you were doing a chart,
she got well over 40%, 44 or something. Was it?
Yeah. If you
but it wasn't close. Like people said, could she win?
It's a lot closer. It's getting closer.
Nowhere near close.
It's getting closer all the time compared to last time when she got a quarter.
Yeah. Okay, you're comparing.
But that's the point. If you looked at a graph,
look at these swings.
If you looked at a graph, the trend is such that
she's becoming more popular over time.
Yeah.
But he's becoming less popular.
But but like most elections, it felt like a bad choice for the French because she's got lots of deficiencies and she's got that family sort of National Front shit going on. And Macron is not loved within France, to the best of my knowledge.
I wonder for her how much the whole Putin association tripped her up at the moment, given what's going on, that she's been quite perceived as being quite close to him in the past. And sort of,
I'm not going to get dragged into that. I'm trying to wrap it up, and now you're taking me off.
Ruining everything.
No, it's not your fault, but I just in the name of time.
Free speech,
In the name of time, yeah. No, I'm censoring you. This is
You're
hate.
cancelled.
This is hate podding. So yeah, to wrap it up, this laptop story could have swung the US election, and all of social media, apparently in concert, it certainly happened at around about the same time, and it was published by the New York Post, which is one of the biggest papers in the States. Yeah, it's a bit more tabloidy. It's not the Washington Post. It's not the New York Times, but it'd be equivalent of something like the Mail. Yeah. It's massive. New York Post published it, and they basically made sharing it on social media impossible. You couldn't even share it on direct messages on social media. That was how hard the algorithm kicked in.
One of our freelancers was the subject of a Mail story this week.
Yes, I know.
As you know.
I'm not going to get into that. That'd be too indiscreet. But yes, that was a funny old one. I'd be interested to speak to him to see whether or not it was just a joke he made that backfired. But anyway, again, I won't be side. You keep it on sidetrack me. I'm the one that gets in trouble for bad time management. But the point is, to wrap it up, this is the power of social media now. I don't think it's hyperbolic. I don't think it's overstated to say that social media could have swung the last US general election. If they hadn't censored that Hunter Biden laptop story, Trump could have won. And I'm not saying I wanted Trump to win. I'm just saying that could have had a pivotal effect. And so this is the amount of power we're talking about now. This is why people are freaking out about Musk having it, and they'd probably freak out about anyone having it, because this is a lot of power going on. This is the digital public square. I get your point. It's not a public square in terms of substantial and constructive discussion, but it does seem to have a massive effect on public matters such as general elections. That's why we had the Cambridge Analytica freak out, which I thought was overblown, but it was born of the fact that people were worried that this fringe little company like Cambridge Analytica could have had an effect on things like the Trump election or Brexit or whatever. So that's the long and short of it. Those are the stakes that we're dealing with here. I think they're absolutely enormous. I know which side I'm on, and I'm on the side of people who are low censorship, and I think let's just deal with some of the tricky stuff that comes with unfettered freedom of speech as it comes. But if you start using terms like hate speech that are then defined by politicians, defined by people like Nadine Dorries or the woman in charge of Ofcom, then all you're doing is shifting the power from Elon Musk to Nadine Dorries, and I don't see how that's any better. Better to just not have a concentration of power at all, and that's where you get this laissez-faire stuff. There's no concentration of power. No one's deciding. You just let it run, and yes, there's going to be bad outcomes, but at least power's not concentrated in one place. So anyway, I'll leave that there. Nokia. Do you know what, actually? I'm just thinking you just had to go and have a little visit. I think I need to too. And it might be a good opportunity for you to have a monologue. So you get yourself ready to give it about 5 minutes on Nokia, because you can't expect Pierre to pitch in on that one. That's not an area of core interest for him.
We actually, Ian and I talked a little bit about it before.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I'm going to scooch past.
We can pick up where we left off then before you came in.
So I'm going to scooch past, and I'm going to hand the ball to you to tell us about Nokia's quarterlies.
Watch out with the
Yeah.
cable.
So you were talking about the share price movement, weren't you, on the day?
Yeah. No, remember, I looked at it over a week and then over a year, and it looked exactly the same.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it went up about. I think the market's open with it up about 3%.
Right.
And I mean, to me, it's always awful to say that it's sort of a mixed set of results, because it makes it sound kind of boring. And there were interesting things in there. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's good in some ways, I think, and it's bad in other ways. I mean, the guy who's CEO at the moment, Pekka Lundmark, who took over from Rajiv Suri in mid sort of 2020. So he's sort of a year and a half in, and his big mission, really, his number one mission when he took over, was to kind of restore profitability. I think they were lost. They were kind of I mean, depending on how you look at it, because there's all these different accounting systems. They were loss making when he took over, and you know, even if you sort of look at it more favourably, the margins are incredibly thin. I think
trim the fat.
Yeah, exactly, totally. I think the operating margin the quarter before he took over was something like 3.3%. You know, and which is. Yes, obviously they're now talking about wanting to be up at sort of 12-13%, even higher potentially. So his mission really was to, they bought Alcatel-Lucent in 2016 and ended up with this quite bloated company. I think over 100,000 people, a lot of overlap between in the mobile area. In particular, maybe not so much in some other bits of the business, but that was something they needed to sort out. And so one of his big missions has been to restructure, make it simpler, break things up a bit more, have a separate mobile section. That's important because people want to be able to see what's going on there, because it's had some problems. Put a few other things together, but reduce the number of kind of middle managers, have a sort of smaller senior management board, and then cut jobs basically. So come down from where it was up at sort of 100,000 a few years ago down to between 80 and 85, I think was the level they were talking about. You can go in, Scott, if you want. And on that measure, I think he's had a lot of success. They're much more profitable than they were. They had this write down on exiting Russia that cost them about 100 million, pretty similar to Ericsson. Both those companies have decided they're pulling out of Russia because of what's going on in Ukraine. It's not a huge amount of their business. It would have been a fairly easy decision for them, actually. It's only about 2% of revenues, but they've had an impact there, which was one of the reasons. I think the operating margin is about 6.5% on a reported basis this time round. If it wasn't for that, it'd be something like 8.5%. Much better than the levels they were reporting under Suri. And I think you have to give him credit. He's done quite a good job in terms of making it look a lot sort of leaner and meaner than it was before he took over. And then parts of it are doing really well from a sales perspective. So the fixed line is just on a tear based on demand for fibre products, really. And it's a big part of the business. It's not the biggest unit, but it's the second biggest after mobile, and it's reporting really strong growth. They've been in a good position really as the only big provider of fibre broadband access equipment other than Huawei and ZTE and a couple of other Chinese providers. You've got to go down to the level of Adtran and Calix, which are much, much smaller, to find alternatives to Nokia. And people don't really want to use the Chinese anymore. There's been this, shift to working at home during the pandemic. Everybody's now enthusiastic about investments in fibre. We were just talking about it before we came on.
Our streets have been torn up.
Our streets have been torn up. So that's great for Nokia, obviously.
Shit for traffic.
And you both live in sort of southwest sort of London, don't you?
So they've got this terrific fibre story going on, and they've got this turnaround in terms of the job cuts, and not just job cuts, because what they're doing is they're cutting some jobs, but they're trying to reinvest some of the money they save in research and development. And the idea there is that you get a more competitive lineup of products. It also helps your gross margins because you can produce things more cheaply once your technology gets better. And they've had this transition going on in mobile, where they ran into problems a few years ago, partly connected with the complications of the Alcatel-Lucent merger, but also to do with some supplier issues around Intel and mistaken choices about which chips to use. They had this big sort of 5G slip up a few years ago, and they're now kind of getting on top of that. And that's led to this improvement as well in sort of profitability. The doubt, I would say, is over the sort of performance of the mobile group, which is still... I mean, when I did my story write-up, I actually did a contrast between Ericsson's results and Nokia's mobile business, because they're kind of doing the same thing to some extent.
They're definitely competing directly with
competing directly. And if you look at Ericsson, if you look at it on a constant currency basis, which is the only way to do it really, because that strips out things that are outside their control, and reported that actually they both looked better than they would have done, I think. Well, certainly Nokia did anyway.
Well, we had that with Nokia's. We had to factor in that massive Russia write-off, didn't we?
So you factor in the Russia write-off, but ignoring that, looking at it on a sort of constant currency basis with the revenue side of things on mobile, and they're down 4%, whereas Ericsson's up 4%,
right,
in terms of sales.
Seems.
And the message, and they were down last year. If you look at Nokia over the last sort of 5-6 quarters, it's generally been shrinkage on a constant currency basis. And they've had these big setbacks that obviously affected the numbers last year, like they lost contracts in Russia. They didn't pick up any of the sort of 5G contracts when they were doing their first phase rollout. They had this big setback in North America where Verizon awarded a 5G job to Samsung instead of Nokia. That's obviously affected the numbers last year. But the message this year is that 2022 is going to be the year when mobile's growing again. And yet the first quarter, they're down 4% on a constant currency basis. And that would be, if I was going to be critical and if I was an investor sort of, wanting to sort of worry about Nokia, that would be the area where I'm looking at them and going, hang on a minute, when is this turnaround going to come? They've had this product refresh and they seem to have got on top of some of the problems they were having. And you talk to analysts and they've reacted quite well to the stuff they announced some time ago, and yet they're still sort of lagging. Yeah. And I just wonder,
Do you think it's just a momentum thing?
Well, I think one of the issues is that a lot of the work's been sold, hasn't it? A lot of the contracts have already gone in terms of developed market operators saying these are the companies who are going to build our 5G networks.
You say that, and I'm sure you're right. I wouldn't dream of sort of contesting your knowledge on it, but I have heard. I think it might have been like I'm doing 2 jobs at the moment because, as I said on the last pod, I've got a new colleague joining on the 11th of May, our meter, and she's the new Way, and Way was on the pod a couple of times. But this is the role we have within Telecoms.com, which is to do the custom content, i.e. the more commercial stuff. I'm having to do that at the same time as doing the journalistic side. And so, but one good thing about it, sometimes you're on calls and you hear some stuff that you wouldn't necessarily hear otherwise. So I'm obviously not going to betray any of our clients and lose us money. But there was one call, and in fact I can't even remember who it was, but they were talking about how much more protracted and staggered and drip-fed the 5G investment cycle is compared to previous investment cycles.
Yeah, and I take that point.
Yeah. So that's just one thing to slightly, not as even necessarily push back, but just to qualify what you just said about how if if we're supposed to be in the middle of 5G frenzy, it might not be quite as frenzied as previous generations.
I take that point.
Skeptic investment.
Where I'm sceptical is that, let's look at the UK, for example, because we know that market better than probably any other one, the two of us. You've got the 4 operators there who've all gone out and awarded contracts to whichever vendors they want to do their 5G rollout, yeah? And
or at least one phase of it.
Well, I don't know if it is one phase of it.
You don't think 5G rollout's phased?
Look,
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
when they did 4G, right, all these companies use 1 or 2 vendors, yeah? They split the company up in a couple of regions, and they generally have 1, 2 or 3 at most, let's say. Vodafone probably may be the most diverse, and and that's possibly why it's got Open RAN in the mix in the west of the country. But the other ones have said, I mean, I think if you talk to 3, which are pointed, very much had a sort of one vendor per generation approach to the way it's rolled out 3G and 4G. I think the whole of 3G was done by Nokia, and the whole of 4G was done by Samsung.
So it's only when a new generation comes along that they put it out to tender and it's competitive. Yeah.
Well, they've put it out to tender. You can stick with your existing suppliers, which is usually what happens, actually. I mean, in the case of 3, they've
yeah, but the point of putting it out to tender is to keep your existing suppliers honest, at very least.
The point is that just because we've only got sort of 20% or 30% population coverage in the UK of 5G at the moment, doesn't mean that the other 70% is up for grabs and that there's a massive pool of vendors there competing to get it. Nokia's already won jobs with BT in the UK. It's actually done quite well in the UK, I would say, because of the Huawei sort of swap out. It's picked up work with BT, but it's not. There's not anything else to be gained. Is the point I'm trying to make? Trying to make. They're there in the mix as that sort of they've won that deal. And maybe revenues will start flowing in.
And if they're 4% down and Ericsson's 4% up, then that's still a valid comparison.
Yeah.
Regardless of the nature of the 5G rollout.
I know they book revenues as work gets done. So you could say, because it's at such early days, we've got this situation where, the 60% of the country that still needs building will start booking revenues when that comes in. But Ericsson's in the same situation, yeah?
Yep.
And so is Huawei, so are the other big kit vendors, and they just don't. They've just yet to. I mean, they're talking about 2022 being the year of growth for mobile, and having had a first quarter where they're 4% down, obviously puts pressure on them in the next 9 months to kind of do quite well. And their overall forecast this year is for total company revenues to be up about 6% at the midpoint, which compares with 2% growth last year that they delivered. So it's quite a big increase. They're already doing really well in fixed. So you sort of think, well, it's got to come from mobile, really, hasn't it? This improvement to some extent. They've got to. They just seem to be under pressure to show that this mobile turnaround that's happened on the technology side really is sort of playing out for them.
And one dilemma for them in mobile, for me, in a sort of very top line way, stripping out strategic missteps like FPGA and that sort of thing, is Ericsson is an equivalent size company, I think, in market cap. I can't actually remember.
Yeah.
But all it does is fucking mobile.
Totally.
So it puts all its R&D into it.
Yeah.
Huawei would have us believe it's currently spending through the arse on R&D as well.
Yeah.
As ever with its numbers, they're so opaque, you take them with a pinch of salt. But whereas Nokia's spread more thin. So I guess it's always going to be at a bit of a disadvantage in mobile. Do you think that's fair enough to say?
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point. If you look at, they actually do nowadays break out what they spend per unit. So it used to be under Rajiv Suri, the previous CEO, that mobile was bundled in with the fixed. It was all like one big networks group, and they had this figure for R&D spending, but you couldn't really tell what was going where. Whereas now it's separated out, so you can see what they're spending on mobile, and it's clearly a lot less than what Ericsson doesn't break out its R&D spending, by the way, and they also have digital services and managed services in the mix, but those units are very small, so you have to assume that most of the R&D spending is going to be going into mobile networks because they don't do fixed networks. And if you look at R&D levels at both companies, I think they're both at about 4 billion, 5 billion a year. But the you can see that Nokia's, say, putting 2 billion in. Most of Ericsson's money's into mobile. Most of Ericsson's money's going into mobile radio, you'd have to assume, just because that's most of what it does. So there's a lot more spending by Ericsson on the same kinds of products than there is on Nokia.
Yeah.
And then,
so
as you say, you've got this
to be able to make better products.
And
just
I think
on brute spend
with
alone.
Huawei, it's always been a concern. I mean, they're involved in all sorts of things, including handsets and software and cars and whatever it might be nowadays. So we never really know where bits of the R&D spending
Especially given
go.
that they don't give us very detailed numbers.
They don't give you detailed numbers, but it's a different case with them anyway, because they've become, sort of toxic, essentially.
Yeah, and they're forced to diversify into an area that the Yanks aren't currently stopping them
But
doing.
this is another reason why you sort of think, why is Nokia done better? I mean, Ericsson talks a lot about market share numbers, and how it's grown market. It doesn't split them out, actually, but it talks on earnings calls about we've grown our market share again in the quarter, and the gains have come at the expense of such and such. They don't name companies, but they give you clues. And they just seem to be doing very well. Now, the other thing I thought was very odd this time round about Nokia's quarterly earnings is when Rajiv Suri was in charge and there was all this concern about them having screwed up on 5G, one of the things they did to try and reassure investors and to show investors that they were still competitive and fighting back is they started publishing exactly what their 5G mobile market share was, or rather their share of the 4G and 5G markets. And then they also were showing the 5G conversion rate, which is basically how many 4G customers you've converted to 5G. That carried on under Lundmark until this quarter. That number completely disappeared from the report.
And why do you think? What will be their reasons for doing that?
Well,
Sorry, the reason I'm being distracted is I'm trying to fire up my little investment app, which will show me how my shares in Nokia and Ericsson have done.
You forgot your login.
It just won't do it.
We can only speculate about, and it wasn't the trouble with. It was a question I would have asked the CEO if I'd received the earnings report before the call he did with journalists. But because that call was at 6:30 in the morning UK time, and I didn't even get the earnings report until. Actually 5 minutes into the call, I think, is when it arrived in my inbox. It wasn't something I could put to him, but I don't know because I didn't get to ask it of them. But the suspicion's going to be that there's something to hide, yeah? It's exactly the same.
As soon as
it's
you start
exactly the same as when EE stopped publishing details of mobile customer numbers, yeah? Remember they stopped publishing how many. It was either ARPU or mobile customers. They stopped publishing a couple of years ago, and the reaction of equity analysts was well, why would they do that unless things like why would Lundmark came in? Suri put this measure in to reassure investors that things were actually going better on mobile than they were led to believe. And every single quarter I've looked at this number in their earnings report since Pekka Lundmark took over. And it disappeared this time round. It wasn't in there. There was no reference to it at all. And no explanation for why it wasn't published.
Well, so just quickly, as I finally managed to get my free trade app up, I started fucking around with equities around the time where Corona kicked in. So let's say about 2 years ago.
And you're now a billionaire.
Far fucking from it, mate. But my Ericsson stake since, let's say then, I honestly don't know when I started it, is down 28%. My Nokia stake's up 25%, which is funny because there was a time about a year or so ago where it was the opposite. So, and this isn't in any way to undermine or contradict or challenge any of the analysis that you've just said, but
there's no contradiction because, as I say, he's done a fantastic job on restoring profitability.
Yeah.
They're a profitable company now. I don't think they were under Suri. They've had a 5G product turnaround. I'm saying if you were going to be concerned about them, totally. I still don't think they're there. There's still not a sign that they're there on the sales front with mobile. There's still not a rebound in mobile. I put a chart on the site actually that shows quarter-on-quarter growth rates for Ericsson Networks and Nokia Mobile. And there's a line in the middle, obviously, where above it is positive and below it is negative. And pretty much every quarter Nokia is negative and every quarter Ericsson's positive. That's on constant currency basis for the mobile side of things. I think maybe investors are thinking to themselves, okay, they had a bad year last year because they lost out in China the year before. They lost this Verizon deal. Clearly numbers are going to be down. And let's see what happens in 2022. But to have a first quarter where you're down 4%, you stop showing what your market share numbers are. Yeah. And the other thing that was the worry is they've got this massive focus on cost efficiency, so trying to beef the margins up as much as possible. At there's this huge supply chain crunch going on at the moment, components issue,
which is another thing Nokia flagged up in its quarterlies, wasn't it?
What Ericsson said, so Ericsson's results are almost the reverse of Nokia's. Ericsson was up 4%, but its gross margin went down for networks. And when they were explaining that, they went, no, not R&D. The reason the gross margin was down because they spent on supply chain diversification to make sure,
and a bit of stockpiling.
Could have been stockpiling, could have just been making investments in countries where you
where
can
normally
make,
they wouldn't bother.
Where you might not bother, whatever it is. They downplayed the impact of supply chain constraints on sales, which were up.
So did Apple.
But they said it had an impact on the gross margin. Nokia, their gross margin was up 6 percentage points, which is huge, but their sales were down 4% in constant currency. And when they were explaining the sales dip, they went, there are big supply chain crunch problems at the moment, and that's affecting our ability to sell. So is the inference
that they're storing up a supply chain crisis in future quarters?
Well,
Ericsson won't suffer
the inference to me, if you don't actually have them spelling it out, what any investor who sees those numbers is going to think is, has Nokia made itself more vulnerable to supply chain problems by not spending money on diversification?
Totally. No, indeed.
And I put that in my story. Apparently, my analysis is shit, according to these guys that troll me on Twitter. So I don't know what I'm talking about.
You guys on Twitter, you can fuck off.
But that's what I took from it, and I just think that I think there's lots of positive things to say about Nokia. Because I actually think Lundmark's done a really good job in a lot of ways. And
be a tangent. It's almost linked to the previous segment. I find trolling interesting because I think you get absolute trolls. You just get some people who haven't got a life, and they just go on social media just give people a hard time. But even there will be selective. It's not like one day they're hassling farmers and the next day they're hassling, telecoms journalists or whatever. But if we assume these two investors that regularly give you a hard time over your stuff, it's presumably from how you've been characterising it, they're giving you a hard time when they think that you have been too bearish on Nokia.
It's quite obvious that they don't like criticism of Nokia.
And if they're investors rather than Nokia employees, because I sometimes get this in the comments.
They might be employees.
They might be. Oh, okay.
I mean, they've got names that Lexus and Old Fecky.
Have they got like Finnish sounding names?
Well, Lexus and Old Fecky is what their Twitter handles are.
Oh,
so
right.
There's no clue really as to who
I see.
they
so
are.
they've got anonymised.
They're very
names.
anonymised people. I mean, I have been tempted to sort of go on and say, I'd be quite happy to have a discussion with you about why
you don't have your comments open on your stories, do you?
No,
because the first thing I'd do is I'd invite them to comment substantially.
Well, they claim to like light reading, despite
despite
one of them
being
does
a
anyway.
bastard.
And so I was tempted to just say, look, I'd be quite happy to have a chat with you where you think I'm getting it wrong. But I just think, quite frankly, they just don't like criticism.
No, so that's my curious thing. Other than being thin-skinned and telling them to fuck off, and I'm only joking when I tell them to fuck off. I just thought it was funny.
I mean, one of them highlighted this Reuters article as an example of a really good piece.
Right.
But which, by the way, that Reuters article attributed Nokia's success in the quarter to demand for 5G. Well, the mobile bit was down 4% on a constant currency basis.
Next,
the reason it did well had nothing to do with that.
Next, you'll be saying, and I'm sure you're not, that sometimes Reuters claims that questions were asked by itself when in fact they were asked by other journalists.
Well, possibly they had another discussion with him separately where they said
this is an offline chat we had.
Yeah, I mean, this is the two other interesting things actually that came out of the call that I was on, where I got the chance to ask the CEO about prices, because obviously everybody's talking about inflation, component costs going up, wages going up, and there's this concern about what that means for what companies, what operators have to spend on the equipment they buy from people like Nokia. So I just asked the CEO, are you planning on raising prices, or are you going to sort of take it within your margins? And he was like, we're definitely not going to absorb it into our margins. We're in discussions about increasing prices at the moment.
Yes.
And it's easy. He said it's easier to do for new customers than it is for existing customers, obviously, because they're locked into contracts and stuff.
Well, and existing customers tend to be a bit like, fuck off, I'll pay what I always paid.
And I suspect that others are thinking the same way. I mean, Mike Dana, my colleague, wrote a really good article about lots of vendors sort of thinking about things this way, which is normal because prices are going up for everybody pretty much. It's not like it's unusual, but it's always it's always a bit of a risky move, isn't it, when companies start raising prices? And I think the best example of that is Netflix, where they've raised prices and it looks like people have gone, hang on a minute, we're not going to keep subscribing to Netflix.
There's got to be an upper limit.
I think everyone's raising prices this day.
No, but this is what I'm saying. But this is what I'm saying is like what you have to do it in a way. You have to be quite careful about how you do it, and because if your competitors come along and don't increase them as much, perhaps, or maybe they see an opportunity to, maybe they're going to go for market share, and they're going to just take a margins hit, and they're not going to raise their prices. You're going to be screwed potentially.
Amazon and Disney make money in other areas, so that's why.
So. And the other thing that he said that I thought was interesting was on the cost savings program. So what we came in talking about, which was getting the headcount figure down to between 80 and 85,000. You'll remember covering that when they first said they were going to cut sort of up to 10,000 jobs or whatever. I think the figure at the moment, something like, Christ, I can't even remember actually, but I'm going to have to refer to my story about...
Actually, I'll fill in the gap because there's some random irrelevance I wanted to say. Firstly, I've switched from the Beavertown Heavy Gravity to one of Neil McRae's Coronas, and the taste differential is absolute. I've gone from chewy to the most lightweight Mexican beer. Another thing, when I fired up my phone to look at my free trade account to look at the shares of Ericsson and Nokia, a couple of news stories came up. Firstly, a Tory MP's had some kind of punishment for watching Grot on his phone in the fucking House of Commons.
I can't believe this happened.
Well, apparently it has. And then the other thing is Boris Becker, the former Wimbledon champion, has been locked up for 2.5 years for taking a piss.
Well, I could see that
on his
coming.
accounts.
I could see that coming because he got sort of he got found guilty.
But for him to actually be locked up, that's just so dramatic.
That's dramatic.
Anyway, go ahead.
So back to it. I've got the figures here. So since 2020, so these are year average figures. Nokia doesn't do this year end stuff, which is more useful, I think, in its reports. It does year average, but year average since 2020, 4,000 jobs have gone, and 10,400 have gone since 2019. So its current workforce is about 87,900. And their guidance was that they will, when he first started talking about cost savings, they were going to go down to between 80,000 and 85,000.
By now?
No, the sort of end of year or early 2023.
Oh, okay.
But obviously, there's a huge difference there. I mean, they're at 87,900. You're talking about a difference of, if they go down to 80,000, that's almost another 8,000 jobs to go, as opposed to only 3,000.
I think they can do it?
Well, I asked it. They can. I asked him where things are basically with cost, with the cost program and what they're planning on doing. Is it going to be more aggressive this year? And he said basically that it's now more likely to be at the lower end of the original guidance. I read his quote exactly. When we talked about headcount, we gave a scale and we said it would depend on market conditions finally where we will end up. Now you'll have seen the market conditions have been strong. We've had strong orders, strong growth, especially in network infrastructure, so that's fixed, and other things. And of course, you need hands to deliver everything we've sold, and that does impact the headcount development going forwards. Well, the inference from that is it's more likely to they're more likely to end up at 85k.
Because you could apply that same logic if things were shit. And you could say, oh, we need more people there to pick things up. I just think that's just standard corporate talk. I mean, they either get rid of the people or they don't.
Well, I mean, for me, I took that to mean they're probably more likely to not go as deep as they were planning on doing.
Because I think things are going well, and then there's less need to get rid of them. I get that. That is more logical. Whereas if things were going really Pete Tong, they might need to get rid of people even more. Yeah. I just think you could always come up with a narrative that says that we better not.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't go. We're definitely going to be 85 rather than 80, but. Yeah, it looks like they probably won't cut as deeply as they were talking about doing. So the question then is, as you were just saying, they don't spend as much on R&D as Ericsson does in mobile. So part of the reason for doing these cuts is it's this juggling act, isn't it? Because if they want to free up money to put into R&D, they're going to have to make cuts. But if they make too many cuts, then it becomes difficult to actually sell the stuff because you don't have people on the street sort of going out and they're not knocking on doors, obviously.
And if you're not spending enough on R&D, your products are shit. Yeah. And so on.
So it's a tricky one for them to get the balance right. Yeah, who'd be a CEO, exactly. Well, I'll give it a go because I quite like the look of the salary. But I just do it for a year, though, mind. And then I'd probably move to the Bahamas.
Get your bonus.
Yeah.
I'd do
a year and get my bonus and then I'd be like, he's the worst CEO ever.
Like, Stephen Carter, if you want a sabbatical... You want to take 3 months off? I'll step in. I'll have 3 months of your salary, and then I'll hand it back over, whatever the car crash is, when you come back, and we can just chalk it out to experience. Okay, we better move it on. So, Red Hat, Duck and Waffle, all that business. So we've covered the food, and that was great. It was like a 4-course thing. Actually, we covered the food, but I'm going to go back onto it. It's a 4-course thing. The first lot arrived. We thought that was a start, and that was just like stuff for everyone to have a go at. And there were things like polenta balls in breadcrumbs that had been fried.
Truffle.
There was truffle
there was
on one
someone
of the
had a
things,
risotto
though.
with truffle on it.
Classic.
Yeah, you got a bit of truffle. There was like dates wrapped in bacon. It was quite opulent stuff. And me and Ian had octopus, which we always feel a bit guilty about, because then you see some video of octopuses doing cool shit, and then you're just going, "Oh, look at me! What a twat! I'm just eating one." But it was really nice, and there's a pudding. One of the puddings had a waffle involved as well. There was like a lemon meringue waffle pudding.
Ooh.
I'm fucking obsessed with waffles. Anyway, but that's not what I want to talk about. The theme of the lunch, which was like a sort of round table, just general chat, they had the main spokespeople were a couple of Red Hat execs, including their CTO, whose name I forget. He's got an awesome goatee.
His first name's Chris.
Chris, okay. Chris.
So we'll just call him Chris.
Chris
CTO
Goatee.
at Red
Call him
Hat.
Chris Goatee.
Chris Goatee.
And then there was, I think, Daryl Jordan Smith, is that his name? He's
Yeah,
another guy.
sounds about right.
I've bumped into him once or twice over the
Oh,
years.
we interviewed him at Mobile Congress.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
Did I do it?
No.
Chris
Oh, right.
Wright.
Chris Wright is the CTO. And then there was also a couple of other spokespeople who were partners. There was
His
a
own
guy from...
Wikipedia page.
You what?
He's got his own Wikipedia page.
Go on. Jesus Christ. That's pretty hardcore, isn't it? What does it say about him?
Chris Wright is a Linux kernel developer and CTO with Red Hat. He was the Linux kernel co-maintainer for the stable branch with Greg Crower-Cartman. He's involved with Linux kernel security-related topics
That's
and
enough.
currently the maintainer for
He's
the
just-
LSM framework.
He's just off the scale geeky, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. He's just fucking forgotten more.
Massive
about shit than
brain.
another way. Yeah. Exactly. Very clever guy.
And
I
he's
was
obviously had that-
actually in the lift, because in this building, this is a really tall building. Yeah, there he is with his goatee. I was actually in the lift with him, but I didn't recognise him. I think I've met him before, but he had a mask on. He's obviously one of these people who's still a bit more worried about the whole Rona thing. And I didn't really recognise him. And the lifts are mad going in that building.
They are.
Because they just whiz up. And then suddenly, it is one of the taller buildings in London, surely. I mean, it's taller than the Gherkin, because you look down on it. I think I remember saying you look down on its bell end. Because that is kind of what the Gherkin's shaped like. Anyway, but yeah, no, he's really smart and really good communicator. And then there was a guy from Intel, and he was a guy who's obviously interested in a more sort of telecoms-y, non-core data center Intel thing. And then there's a guy we've both bumped into in the past from Cult. What was his name?
Mirko Voltolini.
There we go. Italian guy, great Italian accent. And so he was more like, I don't know, I suppose the customer side. Yeah. And then a few journalists. There was you and I, a couple of other people from the sort of telecom side. There was Yanni from Telecom TV. There was the bloke who I keep forgetting I've met him from Mobile World Live. What's his name?
Oh, Cavett.
Cavett, yeah. I said hello to him, and I was with that sort of "who are you" face on me. He's like, "Cavett, we've met loads of times." I was like, "Sorry." I now that I'm 50, I just fall back on that now. I just go, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
And then some people from the more sort of pure IT side, like Computer Weekly and whatever. And it was like 3 hours, and it was mainly. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I think my only criticism would be it'd be nice if there's a bit more frivolity. It was just unrelenting techie talk for about 3 hours. But obviously we're there as a work. We're not just there to get pissed and fuck around. And the theme was the edge.
Well, I find it quite hard to work in that environment. I think that was to be my main criticism. I think it's really nice to go out, obviously, and just sit down and for it to be quite informal and have food. Obviously, brilliant.
Lovely grub as well.
Not going to complain about anything like that, but I think these events, they could benefit from having a sort of small, let's say 45-minute session to start with, where you do it in the bar even or whatever, or another room, and people can just sit there and take notes and ask questions.
And do the Q&A session.
And then
you have the just more social
and
phase.
because it's quite hard to to be eating food. And I mean, increasingly these days,
we were quite crammed in because it's a small room because it's the top of a skyscraper.
It is, and the other thing, I think, the way people take notes these days isn't, I mean, I was scribbling away in a notepad
the
during
notepad
that,
they gave us,
but I don't really like doing that. I'm much more sort of happy to, and you are as well. Actually, we sort of sit there and type, and I think increasingly people do that. They get their laptops out and take notes just directly.
But there was no real room.
But you couldn't really
type.
do that in that environment. It was, I mean, we were actually quite cramped at that table. There wasn't really even room to sort of push your chair back a bit and get your laptop out.
But all those logistical matters borne in mind.
Yeah.
When we talk about the edge, one of the things I found interesting. So people talk about edge computing, mobile edge computing, the mobile edge, all that sort of thing. All it really means, to whittle it down to Scott language, is having computing power somewhere other than a sort of massive data center. Now, I'd always thought of it, I think of it in a mobile age, so I think of it as like, base stations in the past might have been relatively dumb in the past, i.e. there were just antennas and radios and whatever basic computing was needed to support the sort of baseband type of shizzle.
Yeah.
But increasingly, they will stick a little mini data center, at least like a rack, a cooled rack, at the bottom of this base station that does a bit of local computing. And I think the first time I learnt a sort of basic sort of physical need for edge computing was Marcus Weldon, who used to be the head geek at Nokia. He came over from Excel Lucent and Bell Labs and all that sort of thing. Don't know what he's doing now. Do you know what he's doing now?
I don't, but I thought that was one of the most peculiar of the sort of executive departures that happened under the change of management. I just didn't really get that one.
And he's a really good communicator as well.
He's a good communicator, and he's generally regarded as being one of the brightest people in the industry. I think.
So that's a hell of a loss.
It just seemed like they were losing someone really key.
Maybe some VC just paid.
Well, maybe he wanted to go. I don't know. You don't know. Maybe he wanted to be off. I don't know.
He just wanted to spend all his time talking about Man U with Ray. But I remember him doing a presentation once, I think it might have been an Omdia event, where he's just talking about the laws of physics and the speed of light, and how if you want things like low latency, this was several years ago, this is when 5G was a sort of a glint in the milkman's eye rather than whatever it is now. If you want low latency, you're still subject to sort of the speed of light, and it takes a bit of time for a radio signal to get from A to B. And if A is your terminal, your end device, and B is where it connects to the internet, if B is closer, it'll get there and back quicker.
Yeah,
it's basic fact. So that was what I understood. But then one of the things that came up when we were talking about it is they defined edge as sort of pretty much any form of distributed computing intelligence, including a smartphone or even an embedded sensor. So I hand it over to you. I just wonder how useful you think the concept of the edge is when it's so broadly defined. I mean, what are we talking about, and why?
I wasn't surprised by that definition, because I've heard people talk about it that way before. That you can the edge to some people can mean, and I think there's another term that people use called fog computing that Cisco was trying to promote a few years ago.
That's like a take on cloud, distributed cloud type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, they were using it to mean that sort of introducing more intelligence into the devices even, and not that the devices are unintelligent anyway, by the way, but sort of having them as but the point is moving it even closer to the user than having it at the base stations. Finding other ways of bringing it into a really sort of, I mean, there's even talk about portable rather, I should say, base stations. Turning vehicles into base stations, for instance.
Right.
Police cars could be base stations that move around that also have computing power.
That actually have an antenna and some transmission capability.
They have some kind of antenna and transmission capability, plus they have the kind of core network capabilities and like a mini sort of data centre in them, like emergency use vehicles.
So the thing I want to throw at you, sorry if I'm preempting you or interrupting, what's the point of all this?
Well, yeah, that's the question, but that's a big question for me as well. I mean, I get, and they were making this. There were a lot of evangelists at that table, it has to be said. It's all obviously in the interests of companies like Red Hat and Intel to be selling this story where we need more silicon and software.
Exactly, for Intel, you can see it totally.
I mean, they were quite blunt about it. I think the guy from Red Hat, who's the SVP, whose name I've forgotten off the top of my head, but
the Darryl Jordan Smith guy.
Yes, he even said with 5G, there's 5 times as much silicon needed. I mean, I almost wrote that up as a story.
So the Intel guy's drooling at this stage.
And the Intel guy, then there's this big I remember asking him, there's this big concern at the moment about chip cycles always seem to go in booms and busts, and at the moment there's obviously supply crunch, but at the same time there's this huge amount of investment being pumped into silicon fabs. And are we looking at it? Because some people have been warning about this, that we're possibly in a situation 2 or 3 years from now where there's a surplus of silicon chips, and the Edge seems to be their rebuttal to that we're in this situation where networks need densifying, private wireless is being rolled out, we've got factory automation going on, we need to have so much more capability close to users and close to the applications themselves. Great, it's a brilliant story, but we haven't seen it happen so far. I mean, IoT...
Intel, for example, is primarily a manufacturing company. They produce a shitload of a thing.
Yeah.
And then if they have a surplus of it, they need to manufacture demand.
But a similar thing goes for Red Hat. I mean, I don't know how their pricing works, and it's always harder with software to figure out. But you guess there's obviously an advantage, I would think, in running Red Hat software at multiple nodes, for instance, rather than just having it in one data center.
Scale equals money.
Some kind of scaling up thing is probably how they adjust their license pricing, I would think, to some extent. But this gets back to what we were talking about with Neil actually last week on the podcast. He was going about the big difference with 5G scale, about having millions of or billions of devices connected, and it's a similar thing, but we just haven't seen it happen.
And why do we want them connected? We get these utopian use cases.
Yeah.
But what will it actually? And I can understand it. Everything having a bit of smarts and B connected to the internet. You can see how there's sort of analytics, there's control, there's like an over-the-air adjustments that you can do, all sorts of things. Turning something from being dumb to smart can do, but the onus is still on them to sell it to people like you and I. Yeah, it's like, why do I care that this fridge is now connected or whatever?
And the other thing that I find that's odd about the Edge is, if you talk to Vodafone, to me, seems to be the UK operator that's made the most noise actually about the Edge. They had this launch with AWS, if you remember, last year, quite early on. Now that's a year ago now. So for a start, what's happening? Because they talked about these use cases and they talked about this as a business opportunity, and I have not heard much of an update from them on that. It'd be interesting to find out what's going on exactly. I think they did something similar in Germany as well. But the other point is this thing they were talking about. I mean, I've talked to Scott Petty, who's now Chief Digital Officer, but used to be sort of head of the UK network side, about this before. How many data centres do you need? How many of these points of presence, or whatever you want to call them, do you need to do a nationwide service where latency is low enough for you to do all these sorts of whizzing applications?
0.1 milliseconds.
And he's like, you could do it with a handful, 6 or 7, let's say. That's very, very different from, you talk to some of the evangelists, and I think even Mirko actually sort of rejected that, didn't he? He was shaking his head going, well, it depends what you want to do with it. But there's an alternative view that if you're really going to do some of the cutting edge, sort of 1 millisecond, 2 millisecond stuff, 6 data centers isn't going to do the trick. You really need to have...
Yes.
Like you were saying, maybe not in devices, but you need to have it rolled out at base stations or aggregation points near base stations. And I think this is a big issue for the industry for me at the moment. This gets to the metaverse as well, actually. One of the things that came out at Mobile Congress was this really interesting blog by, I think his name's Dan Rabinovitz, but he's a senior guy at Facebook on the technical side, saying that today's networks won't cut it for the metaverse, and there needs to be a lot more investment in edge computing, and people need to sort of shorten the distances and all this kind of stuff. And
so that's what it comes down to, is just physical distance.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that's basically. But if you talk to, this is the problem with all of this, is who's going to pay for it? Who's going to pay all this 5 times as much silicon? Building all this front haul investment.
It's great
fiber,
for Intel, but why spend loads of money with Intel? What do you get from it?
And it's this is also we keep talking about inbuilt advantages in the market that company like BT is in a much better position, arguably, for a lot of this stuff if it does go out to the you need tens, you need hundreds of these points to be able to do all this stuff, than someone like Vodafone. You know, as a fixed line operator with more exchanges throughout the country and cabinets and all this kind of infrastructure that they could use and repurpose for this. They've got, you know, if it does go down to that level, it puts them in a sort of stronger position, you would think. But whether it's, we just haven't seen a lot of it. And, you know, if companies really do need to make those kinds of investments, do business models need to change? I mean, I remember talking to Orange about this actually at Mobile World Congress, where they were saying, it brings up net neutrality. You know, this gets back to the whole net neutrality thing, which has resurfaced recently, I think, after a couple of years where it was a little bit quiet. You've got people like Mark Alera saying, you know, the amount of traffic on networks is now so high, we keep having to invest, we're not making any more money, revenues are flat, and it needs to change. We need to be able to start charging people in a different way, or the internet companies need to start stumping up some money, because if the operators themselves are expected to make all these enormous investments in edge infrastructure, and their revenues are just going to carry on doing this and staying at the same level, then it's going to. We're already talking about them being indebted.
I
think
there's a good question. Pierre, is my camera start going mad?
It's the camera. The card is full, but it's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I'm getting close to wrapping up because I think I quite like ending it on a question.
Hold on, wait. 7, 6.
All right. Am I about
5,
to just not be
4,
recorded anymore?
No, 3, 2. And we just did 2 hours for the first time ever.
We just did 2 hours.
It's been a 2-hour one.
Fucking hell. Well, then that's another reason.
We're getting
self-indulgent. It's my fault.
We are.
It's my fault. Well, look, I'm going to wrap it up seeing as we hit 2 hours. We haven't even got a guest. We haven't even got an excuse. We probably did over an hour.
We're heading to
Twitter,
Joe Rogan territory of it being
I know.
half a day.
Well, he is. He normally does about 2 or 3 hours. I will wrap it up, but I also think it's a good place to end it because we're kind of throwing the question to the audience again. We're going edge. We're not totally buying it. That's not to say we don't understand the underlying concepts. We don't understand the selling points. But in terms of the ROI on investment in the edge, it's not that obvious, is it?
No.
And that was one of the things we took from it. And that's not Red Hat or Intel or Colt's fault. They got asked those questions. They fielded them well, but not so well that I think either you or I were completely sold. So I'll leave it there. 2 hours, fucking hell. All right, well, I hope it wasn't too much of a drag for you all. I'll wrap it up there. So thanks a lot for listening, and make sure you join us for the next one.